dedicate this shiur tonight to Refuah Shlema for Shevach ben Hatun Hana El Narafana Lo, El Narafana Lo, El Narafana Lo. And this I want to go to the Ramchal in Derekh Hashem. And in Derekh Hashem, he divides the book into 4 sections. And the last section of Derekh Hashem, he talks about the different mitzvot of the Torah. And he gives a deeper meaning for the various mitzvot. And let's see if we can understand what is the deeper meaning of the mitzvot of Pesach. Okay? So I'm going to read from Derekh Hashem. This is in the 4th book of Derekh Hashem, in the 8th chapter, and this is section 1. This is called B'mitzvot Hazmanim. The mitzvot of the times. What times? Zmanim are the holidays. Holidays come at certain times. The seasonal holidays. And why does he start with Pesach?
First holiday of the year.
That's Chodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. Pesach is the first holiday of the year. If a Jew makes a promise to give a sacrifice to the temple, yes, the Torah says you are not allowed to delay. You have to fulfill your neder. You have to fulfill your obligation. How much time do you have to fulfill your obligation when you give a donation to the temple? What's the latest you can bring it? If you bring it later than that, you are over in the mitzvah of lo te'acher. You're not allowed to be late.
30 days?
No.
Before
6 months.
No. No.
Until the next Zmanim.
It depends on when you donate it.
From Pesach to Sukkot.
It has to be Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot in that order. Which means if I give a korban, if I donate a korban to the Beit HaMikdash the day after Pesach, I don't have to bring that korban. I mean, I should bring it as soon as I can, just whatever. But when am I over on the lo ta'aseh, lo te'acher? If I don't bring it before the first day of the next 2 Pesachs away. Because what has to happen has to be, at the end of Sukkot. Which means once there is a 3-cycle holiday passes in order, that's when I'm late. So it depends on when I gave it. If I offered the korban right before Pesach, I have until after the first Sukkot. If I offered the korban right after Pesach started, I have until not the next Sukkot, but the next one after, because it has to be the 3 holidays in order. So we see the seder of the holidays has halakhic ramifications. Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot. That's the order. So the Ramchal starts with Pesach. Inyan hechametz v'amatzahu. I'm on page 340 in Aryeh Kaplan's version. What is the idea of Hametz and Pesach? What is the idea of Hametz and Matzah? Ki hineh ad Yetziat Mitzrayim, until the Exodus from Egypt, Hayu Yisrael me'oravim bishar ha'umot. The Jewish people were assimilated amongst the other nations, or mixed up with all the other nations. How do we know that? Because it says in the Torah, Lakachat lo goy mikerev goy. What does that mean? To take a nation from a nation. What's the difference between the 2 nations? On the outside, very, very little. We worshipped Avodah Zarah in Egypt. The Egyptians worshipped Avodah Zarah in Egypt. So we were not so good in Egypt, yes? Which means that we were mixed with the nations, which means culturally, we were to a certain level assimilated with the Egyptians. Not completely. We didn't change our language, we didn't change our clothes, and we didn't intermarry. Look at now.
Like Jews in Russia. What?
No.
Yolочка. So it's not like a completely,
Now it's even worse. Because unlike in Egypt, where not one Jew married a Gentile, nobody was with a Gentile. Now, unfortunately, we have Jews marrying Gentiles. So we see the assimilation now is even worse than it was in the time of Egypt. But remember, let's defend ourselves a little bit, shall we? How long had they been in Egypt? 210 years. That's not a lot of time. In the destruction of the first temple, when they came back to build the second temple, not only was there intermarriage amongst the regular Jews, there was intermarriage amongst the Kohanim. Ezra had to tell the Kohanim to divorce, to get rid of the Gentile wives. And how many years was that? 70. So we've been in the exile for close to 2,000 years. I think Hashem has to give us a break. The fact that we're still here and we're speaking words of Torah from his holy book in North Woodmere, almost 2,000 years after the destruction of the second temple and 2,500 years after the destruction of the first temple, we could be better. There's no question about it. We're not patting ourselves on the back. But you know what? With God's help, we're still here. And that's why those very few of us that get it, those very few of us that understand that we are here to fulfill the will of God, because if there are, say, 15 million Jews in the world, how many of them are Shomer Torah mitzvot? How many are Shomer Torah mitzvot? 10%? 12%? Which means if you can speak, if you're Shomer Shabbat, and you identify with the observant Jews of the world, you are in the minority. It'd be nice if everybody did. We have to help them out. So we see Egypt, correct, but we're a minority in a minority. They are considered a Jew, but they're not considered observant Jews.
Still a Jew though?
Yes. As long as their mother was Jewish.
Somebody called me today, Rabbi Rivka. Is that considered like a
Somebody what?
Rabbi Rivka.
Rabbi Rivka called
Girl
me.
rabbi.
Let's not get into politics. Okay? You know what a rabbi looks like. Generally a rabbi, you know. Anyway. Ubitziatam nig'alu v'nivdalu. Now the Ramchal is adding something. Yetziat Mitzrayim wasn't just about redemption. What is the key factor for redemption? Nivdalu. What does the word nivdalu mean? Separate. Distinguished. Which means if we want to be part of the redemption, we can't be like the Goyim. If we're like the Goyim, we delay the redemption. We prolong the exile. We prolong the Egyptian exile. The purpose of the Geulah is the Havdalah, the separation. And how did our parasha start off? HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim. For you, not for the rest of the world, for you. Which means we have to be different than they are. Hopefully better. The Ramchal continues. Yes, please.
So the purpose of the redemption is to distinguish ourselves. And the longer we're not distinguishing ourselves, the longer the redemption continues. It's like
The longer the delay in the redemption continues.
So it's like a catch-22.
Why?
Because the longer we're here, the less likely we are to distinguish ourselves.
Or we could look at it differently. Egypt was called Kur HaBarzel, translated in English, the iron crucible. When you make iron, you heat it up to a very high temperature, correct? And then what do? You remove the impurities. And what you're left with, the finished product, is pure iron. The purpose of the galut is to purify the Jewish people, which means the ones that are weak fall off the wagon.
But that's also not right, because we're
Why?
supposed to get them back on.
We are supposed to do what we can and care about them, absolutely. But it remains their choice. You can't force them. So we have to be concerned because they're our brothers and sisters. and we have to be sad when they fall off the wagon. We have to try our best to pick them up and bring them back on the wagon. But at the end of the day, if they want to remain off the wagon and they choose, a man chooses to marry a Goya, what happens? His children are Goyim. He's off the wagon.
Same thing with the woman to men?
Permanently. Unless somebody comes back. Women's different. Women, that's not like that. Now, of course, it's not good for a woman to marry a Gentile man, right? Why is it bad for a woman, besides the fact that it's not allowed? Because what happens? So if a woman marries a Gentile, the children are Jewish. Baruch Hashem, the next generation is good. How many generations does a parent have to be concerned about?
3.
Two.
2.
Children? Grandchildren. So if a child, a person marries a Gentile, a woman marries if a man marries a Gentile, that's done. Finished. His children are Goyim. If a woman marries a Gentile, her children are Jewish. What is the likelihood that her children will marry Jews? Very small. Why? Because they're going to turn around when Mama says, I want you to marry a Jewish guy. They're going to say, Mom, you didn't marry a Jewish guy. Why should I? And the sons are going to say, Mom, you didn't marry a Jewish guy. Why should I marry a Jew? And what do you say to that? You are stuck. There is nothing you can say to that. So, a person who marries outside, even a woman marries a Gentile man, God forbid, the likelihood of her children and grandchildren being Jewish is remote. Because her sons are not going to marry, right, Jews. Her daughters might, but then their sons will not. The girls are always in good shape. Nothing happens with the girls. The boys are the problem. So the key is to separate. Let's continue on. Ramchal is going to give us a deeper idea of how, about the mitzvot of Pesach. V'hinei ad oto hazman, until that time, hayu kol bechinot gufot b'nei ha'adam chashuchot b'choshech v'zuhama shaya mitgaber alehem. Every aspect of the physical parts of people, of human beings, was dark, in a darkness and a filth that was overcoming them. Which means, what is he talking about? The Yetzer Hara. Because up until the Jewish people left Egypt and received the Torah, the Yetzer Hara won all the time. There was no competition. And they were immersed in the filth that they surrounded with. And that's what it means, Goy mikerev Goy, a Gentile from a Gentile. Ubi yitziyah, but with the redemption, with the leaving of Egypt, nivdelu Yisrael, the Jewish people were differentiated. The nimtzeu gufotam letaher, and their bodies were there so they could become purified. Ulehizdamen la Torah v'la avodah, and to be accepted, to be invited to follow the Torah, to learn Torah, and to worship God, the one true God, not the one that everybody else thinks, or whatever. Ulinyan zeh, and because of this, which means to show that we have to overcome the physical nature, which is to immerse ourselves in things that are the pleasures of the flesh. Nitztavu behashbatat hachametz. We were commanded to remove the chametz. V'achilat hamatzah, and to eat matzah. Now the Ramchal is going to explain what is it about hametz, what is it about matzah that represents physical pleasure. V'hainu, ki hinei halechem, we know that bread, shuchan limzon ha'adam, that is prepared for human consumption, hu mishtaveh be'emet, it's it's basically more digestible. El hamatzav hanertzeh be'adam. It is made in a way that what? It is desired for man, which means we want to make it in a way that's going to be edible. V'inyan hachimutz. What does chimutz do? What does fermentation do to flour? Davar tiv'i balechem. It is natural in bread. Now, when he means bread, he means wheat, spelt, oats, barley, and rye. All those 5 grains, which are the ones that are forbidden because they can become chametz, what is unique about those 5 grains? You can ferment rice. You can ferment corn. You can ferment any sugar, any vegetable, or any fruit that has sugar in it. Fermentation has nothing to do with bread. Anything can be fermented. But as far as the Torah is concerned, fermentation is an improvement in the process of only those 5 grains. Whereas all of the other grains, fermentation is considered to be a sirchon. It's considered to be a degradation, not an elevation. Because when bread is made from the 5 grains and it's allowed to become chametz, it's easy to digest. Why? When you chew it, what happens? It's much easier to chew a pita than it is to chew a piece of matzah. Even if you get the soft matzah, it's much easier to chew a pita than it is to chew a piece of the soft matzah. Your mastication has to be a lot more significant when you're eating matzah than when you're eating bread. And that the taste. We all say at the Seder, oh, this matzah tastes this like it. Matzah tastes the same. It's a question of what gives taste to matzah. Some people like this type of shmura. Some people like that type of shmura. At the end of the day, it's a question of how it's burned. Nothing else gives it taste. It's flour and water. There's nothing in there. There's no sugar. There's no eggs. There's no nothing. So what gives it taste? Either the thickness, okay, which doesn't really change the taste. It's just harder to chew. If it's thin, it's a cracker, or you have to chew it more if it's thick. But it's how it's burned. Bread, on the other hand, even if you don't add sugar, just add, yeast or whatever, bread has a taste. Think about French bread. French bread, what does it have in it? Water and flour. But there's a taste to it. It's a croissant has oils, added stuff on there. But I'm just talking flour and water because those are the ingredients. If you add other things, it's different. If you add ingredients to matzah, it becomes matzah ashira. That is not matzah you can be yotzeh with on the seder. Because a person has to have the matzah at the seder that's made from the 5 grains that does not have the shevach of called chimutz. The Ramchal is going to explain why.
Why is that?
He's going to explain.
Poor man's bread?
No, let's see what the Ramchal says. That's what the Haggadah says. Let's see what the Ramchal says.
Yeah, but it costs more than a regular bread.
Let's see what the Ramchal says. You can make it your own if you want. You can buy your own oven and do it yourself. It doesn't have to cost you anything. But if you're going to be lazy...
I'm just giving you the example. It costs more money than the regular bread.
Okay, then make it yourself. What do you want? Okay? Hine gam hu nimshach lefi hachok hara'ui ba'adam. Which means, why? Why do we like bread? Why do we eat chametz all year long? Because it's an improvement of the wheat, or the 5 grains, in a way that's easy to eat and digest. Shegam hu tzarich sheyeh bo hayetzer hara v'netiyah v'chomrit. But we see what? A person has to have yetzer hara. Why do you have to have the yetzer hara? Correct. If you don't have choice, is no evil, then there's no choice. If there's no choice, then there's no reward. So God created the world where there would be a Yetzer HaTov and Yetzer Hara. A person who follows the Yetzer HaTov gets reward. A person who follows Yetzer Hara gets punished. So all year long you have chametz. Why do you have chametz? Because the Yetzer Hara is an essential ingredient in life to get reward. Omnam, but Lizman meyuchad, for a special time, a limited amount of time. 7 days in the land of Israel, 8 days outside the land of Israel. Shoar, in a measured amount of time. Hutzrechu Yisrael lehimana min chametz velizum b'matzah. The Jewish people were required from the Torah to remove, to not have chametz, and to only have matzah. Why? Liyot mima'atim be'atzmam koach hayetz hara v'netiyal homrit. So that we will become accustomed during those 7 days to weaken our physical desires, to weaken the yetzer hara. What does it sound like? When else over the course of the year do we do what we can to weaken the yetzer hara? That's right. Very good. Yom Kippur has that same quality. Except Yom Kippur is only 1 day. Pesach is 7 days. Ulhagbir be'atzmam, and to give yourself, to make yourself accustomed. Hahit karvut el haruchaniyut, to get close to spirituality. Because even though the yetzer hara is a necessary evil, the way a person approaches God and gets close to God is by denying the yetzer hara, by denying the physical pleasures of life. And Pesach represents a 7-day period where we are denying ourselves the pleasure of eating bread. Why? So we can get close to God. What does that remind you of? Once again, Yom Kippurim. Ulahagbir bats, okay. Ve'ulam, but sheyizonu kach tamid efshar. But for a person to eat like this all year long is not possible and not required. A person is allowed to have chametz 357 days in the year. Ki en zeh hanisa ba'olam hazeh, because this is not God's desire. God's desire is not for the person to completely restrict themselves from their physical pleasures. God's desire is for us to learn how to overcome our need to always be pursuing our physical pleasures. But there are periods of time when a person is allowed to have enjoyment of physical pleasures. Shabbat, Chagim, marriage. There are certain things there's a certain level of physicality that is permitted. Not just permitted, is desired by God. Purim, the holiday we just passed. What does Purim represent? Purim represents getting close to God in the physical world. Drinking, eating. Pesach is an opportunity to train ourselves for 7 days that what? We have to be in control of our physical desires. Because if a person is not in control of their physical desires control them. And then the rest of the year, they cannot get close to God. Because getting close to God is a matter of putting your physical pleasures down. Not gone, just down so you can rise up from a spiritual point of view. But Judaism does not require you to do this every day. 7 days in the land of Israel, 8 days outside. The specific days that are designated for this. It is worthy for us to watch that. Because of this, they will be able to rise up to the level that is appropriate for them. And this is the essential idea of the holiday of Pesach, or he calls it Hag HaMatzot, the holiday of Matzot. Why is that? To show that you can overcome your physical desire and restrict yourself from bread and all these 5 grains when they become Shevach. Because why? Because in order to accept the Torah, it was a matter of differentiating yourselves from the Goyim of the world. And what do we know about the Goyim of the world? They are steeped in their physical pleasures.
In Pesach nowadays, I feel like we indulge ourselves a lot with all the Passover foods. Like it's not, we're not living like this. We're not.
Okay, that's not true. That's not true.
So you may not eat even bread.
Pesach,
you're eating cakes and cookies
Pesach
and everything
is
else.
still a Yom Tov. Pesach is still a holiday. You have a mitzvah on Pesach to have basar and yain, which means you're not restricting yourselves from all the pleasures of the world. You're allowed to drink wine. It's not like Yom Kippur, ve'inni temet nafshotechem. That is an inferior way to get close to God. Anybody can get close to God if they stop eating, stop drinking, live as a hermit on the mountain, and pray all day long. The challenge is to be able to regulate pleasures of the world. So on Pesach, you have to have 4 kosot of yain. Purim, there's no 4 kosot. 4 kosot of yain. And many people, when they drink 4 cups of wine, it doesn't, has a little bit of effect on them. Especially the first 2 that you have on an empty stomach. So what do we see? It's not a matter of removing yourself from all the pleasures of the world. Just vis-a-vis the 5 grains and chametz. Which means if you can find ways to get pleasure that's not from the 5 grains, there's nothing wrong with that. And you're obligated to do so because Pesach is a holiday. So if rice is something that you generally have all year long on Shabbat or other holidays, you should not restrict yourself from rice unless that's your custom. There's no concept in Pesach of inui nefesh. There's a concept of, in one particular area, restricting yourself from fermentation of the 5 grains. Everything else is permitted. And you should enjoy it. You can have meat. You can have barbecue.
I heard the first 2 days you're not allowed to do barbecues like a karbanot, no?
That's not true.
Say it again?
You can have a barbecue.
And the first 2 days?
Why not? And why would Pesach be any different than any other
No,
Yom
it's
Tov?
something to do with the karban. Because when you do it the first night, right, you're supposed to have like a piece of...
Okay, so the lamb, first of all, we don't take a whole lamb. We take a shank. Some people have the custom, the Ashkenazim don't eat the lamb shank at all until Chol HaMoed. Sfaradim, many of them will eat the lamb shank, but not at the Seder night. They'll eat the lamb shank the next morning. And there's some Sfaradim that eat the lamb shank at the Seder. What is your custom? That's the question. As long as you're barbecuing outdoors.
Yeah.
You're not building an altar.
No, yeah.
No one's going to think when a Bukhari is having a barbecue on Pesach, this year you can't do it on the first day because it's Shabbat. No one is going to think when a Bukhari is having, an Israeli is having a barbecue, that they're making a korban. It's what you do all the time when you have a holiday that's not Shabbat. Yeah, so it's not that you're doing a korban. Okay? So the key is to learn how to restrict ourselves from pleasures in this one particular area. And why might we say this one area is so important to restrict our pleasure from? Why davka, these 5 grains? Why not? Why shouldn't say, you know what, you can't have wine, can't have rice? Why only these 5 grains?
Are these the grains in Eretz Yisrael?
What?
Aren't these the 5 grains that grow in Eretz Yisrael?
No, they grow everywhere. Rice grows in Israel too, I think. There are 2 of the grains, Eretz Chita Us'ora. Now, technically, the other ones are cousins of Chita and Se'ora, but Rye is not. Rye is its own. No, oats. One of them is spelt, I forgot, spelt, and 2 of them are cousins, okay? But one of them is not. No, that's not the answer. You could maybe a little bit, but more than that. Then you wouldn't be allowed to have figs.
Right, and pomegranates.
And pomegranates.
And
You can't have pomegranate. You can't have fig arak because it comes from figs. No, but you're allowed to have fig arak. That's not a problem. The idea is like this. One of the opinions for the Etz Hadat was bread. It was a bread tree. Not a wheat tree, a bread tree. What kind of bread? Gluskaot, which are loaves of bread. That was opinion that's one of the opinions that the Etz Hadat was gluskaot, loaves of bread. How do we know that? Because how was Adam punished?
To work for his bread.
For his bread, which means because you ate the bread when you weren't supposed to. Erev Shabbat is supposed to waiting for Shabbat. That was the Etz Hadat. Therefore, God punished him that he's not allowed to have bread without suffering, because that was bread without toil. Because he ate it improperly, now he has to toil to eat bread. So that's the Etz Hadat. What are we trying to show God? We're ready for the Techiyat HaMetim. We can stay away from lechem. We can stay away from loaves of bread. We can have matzah, but we can stay away. We could live without bread, a nice loaf of bread. We could live without that for a week or 8 days. We're okay. And what is the reward? Be'ezrat Hashem, b'Nisan nigalu, b'Nisan atidin lihigael. In Nisan they were redeemed, and in Nisan they're going to be redeemed in the future. And when the Mashiach comes, what does it say? The land of Israel is going to grow trees that give forth bread like gluskaot, which means a person's not going to have to go to the bakery. Women are not going to have to knead the dough to make bread. They're going to have a tree, and they're going to be able to take bread from the tree, just like it was before Adam Harishon made the sin.
The bakery business dies.
That's going to be gluten-free, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay? Any questions?
No.
Baruch Adonai Olam, amen ve'amen.